I stood there in that glass-walled boardroom on the 52nd floor of the Sterling Tower, the Manhattan skyline mocking me through the windows like a jury of indifferent gods, and watched as my entire life crumbled under the weight of lies I never told. The chairman's gavel cracked like a gunshot, sealing my fate with 3 words: "You're terminated, effective immediately." But in that split-second echo, I felt something shift, not regret, but a savage clarity. They thought they were burying Hannah Reese, the ambitious VP who'd clawed her way up from nothing, but they were handing me the keys to their kingdom. And as the security guards flanked me, badges glinting like shackles, I smiled for the first time that day, not because I was broken, but because I knew the body I was leaving behind was just a shell, and the real me, the one who'd been swapped into this nightmare 6 months ago, was about to drag them all into hell with me. It started 6 months earlier, on a rain-slicked night in the bowels of Brooklyn, where the American dream goes to die in puddles of neon and regret. I wasn't always this version of Hannah, sharp-suited, silver-tongued, the kind of woman who could negotiate a merger over martinis without spilling a drop.
No.
The real me was Elias Crow, a mid-level accountant at Sterling and Associates, the kind of faceless drone who balanced books in a cubicle that smelled like stale coffee and shattered illusions. Elias was the one who'd uncovered the rot, millions siphoned off in offshore accounts, laundered through shell companies that traced back to the top, right to Victor Langford, the silver-haired CEO who'd built his empire on the backs of people like me. Victor was the devil in a Brooks Brothers suit, all Ivy League charm and predatory eyes that scanned boardrooms like a hawk eyeing field mice. He'd mentored me once, back when I was fresh out of community college, whispering promises of partnerships and corner offices while his hand lingered just a beat too long on my shoulder. But that was before the betrayal, the deep, festering kind that doesn't just scar you, it rewires your soul. I'd found the ledger, hidden in an encrypted drive on the company server, payments to ghost vendors, kickbacks from suppliers, all funneled to Victor's personal Cayman trust. It wasn't just theft, it was a masterpiece of deception, implicating not just him, but his inner circle, his wife, Elena, the icy socialite who chaired the charity galas, and his golden boy protégé, Marcus Hale, the slick VP of operations who'd been my ticket to the fast track until he decided I was expendable. I confronted Marcus first, in a dimly lit bar off Wall Street, the kind where deals are sealed with scotch and silence. "This ends now," I said, sliding the printed pages across the scarred oak table. His laugh was a knife twist low, indulgent, like I was the punchline to a joke only he got. "Elias.
Kid.
You think you're the first to sniff around? Victor built this company on smarter men than you breaking." He leaned in, breath hot with bourbon, and whispered the secret that shattered me. It wasn't just Victor's scheme. Elena had masterminded it, using her nonprofit as a front to launder funds for political donors, senators, lobbyists, the whole rotten web of DC influence peddling. And Marcus? He'd covered for them both, framing the discrepancies on low-level scapegoats like me, the invisible ones who wouldn't fight back. But I was fighting. I copied the files, emailed them anonymously to the board's compliance hotline, and waited for the dominoes to fall. They didn't. Instead, the next morning, I woke up choking on silk sheets in a penthouse I didn't recognize, staring at a reflection that wasn't mine, porcelain skin, auburn waves cascading over shoulders that had never hunched over spreadsheets, green eyes wide with someone else's terror. Hannah Reese's body. The swap, it defies explanation. Even now. Was it a glitch in some experimental neural implant Victor's R&D team was testing on execs for enhanced cognition? A cursed artifact from one of Elena's occult-tinged wellness retreats she peddled to the elite? Or just the universe's cruel joke on a man too stubborn to quit? All I know is, one moment I was Elias Crow, crashing on my futon in a Bushwick walk-up. The next I was her Hannah, the rising star VP of Finance, whose life I'd audited from afar, envying her poise while pitying the isolation in her Forbes profiles. Panic hit like a freight train. I stumbled to the mirror in her marble-clad bathroom. Her hands, trembling as they traced features that felt alien. My real body, God knows. Maybe slumped in some alley, or puppet by whatever force had yanked my soul across the city. But survival kicked in. American grit distilled to its essence, adapt or die. I rifled through her closet, tailored sheaths and Louboutins that screamed old money, and pieced together the facade. By noon, I was in her office, heels clicking like gunfire on the marble floors of Sterling Tower, fielding calls from analysts who mistook my hoarse good morning for a cold. No one noticed. Why would they? Hannah was a ghost in her own life, brilliant but brittle, betrayed by the same trio who'd crush me. Turns out, she'd been digging too, confiding in Marcus about suspicions of the fraud, only for him to twist her warnings into ammunition against her. In her skin, I had access, codes to servers, key cards to executive suites, invitations to the whispered power lunches where Victor held court. It was a revenge gift wrapped in silk. But it came at a cost, flashes of her memories bleeding into mine, like static on a bad line. I saw her as a girl in the Hamptons, summers poisoned by Elena's neglect, her first board presentation, sabotaged by Marcus's planted error, the night she confronted Victor, only to wake up swapped. Had she been the one in my body, flailing in my dingy apartment, dismissed as a junkie ranting about conspiracies? The thought fueled me. If I was trapped as Hannah, I'd burn their world down from the inside. Make them pay for every life they'd stolen, mine, hers, the faceless others. The first move was subtle, a feint in the grand chess game of corporate warfare. I scheduled a strategy session with Marcus, playing the part of the eager protege, all wide-eyed deference and coy smiles that made my stomach churn. We met in his corner office, the Hudson River a glittering vein below us, and I laid out falsified projections, numbers that painted Victor's latest acquisition as a ticking bomb, riddled with the very fraud I'd uncovered. "It's risky," I said, voice pitched to her husky timbre, leaning forward just enough to let his gaze linger. He bought it, hook and sinker, his hand brushing mine as he promised to run it up the chain. By week's end, the board was buzzing, whispers of audits and shareholder suits slithering through the halls like smoke. Victor sensed the shift. Of course. He called me into his sanctum, a wood-paneled lair reeking of leather and aged whiskey, his eyes narrowing like a shark scenting blood. "Hannah, darling, you've been distant." Everything all right? His concern was a velvet glove over a fist. I could feel the memory echo of Hannah's revulsion, the way he'd cornered her at the holiday gala, breath wine-soured, murmuring about loyalty bonuses that implied far more. I played along, batting lashes while my mind catalogued his tells, the vein pulsing at his temple, the way his fingers drummed like a countdown. Just the pressure, Victor. But I'm loyal to the company, to you. The lie tasted like ash, but it bought time. Nights blurred into a fever dream of dual existence. By day, I was Hannah the shark, greenlighting deals that funneled cash back into traceable accounts, breadcrumbs leading straight to Elena's charities. By night, I haunted Brooklyn dives, flashing her corporate Amex for intel from ex-employees Victor had blackballed. 1. A jittery whistleblower named Ruiz spilled over greasy diner fries. Langford's got dirt on everyone. Senators. Judges. That swap tech? It's black market neural mapping from a defunct DARPA project. They tested it on volunteers, homeless vets, desperate grads. You feel off lately.
Reese?
Might be residual bleed. The swap. It wasn't random. Victor's R&D logs, buried in Hannah's secure drive, confirmed it. Experimental empathy enhancers for negotiations, but weaponized for control. Hannah had volunteered, thinking it'd give her an edge. Instead, they'd flipped her into my body to silence us both. 2 thorns yanked at once. Rage crystallized then, a cold diamond in my chest. This wasn't just theft, it was erasure. A crime where the victim wore the perpetrator's face and begged for mercy. As weeks bled into months, the tension coiled tighter. A noose of my own making. Marcus grew paranoid, tailing me after meetings. His texts a barrage of "we need to talk" emojis masking threats. Elena invited me to her retreat in the Berkshires, a spa disguised as a coven, where power wives swapped secrets over kale smoothies and ayahuasca visions. I went, dosed just enough to feign vulnerability, and recorded her gloating. Victor's so careful.
But you.
Hannah, you see the beauty in the balance. We take from the weak to give to the worthy. Her laugh was champagne bubbles over razor wire. I left with a USB of confessions, her voice damning as any indictment. But the real fracture came at the quarterly board meeting, 2 weeks before the end. I'd planted the seeds, leaked memos, anonymous tips to the SEC, and watched Victor squirm as auditors circled. In the elevator ride up, alone with my reflection, Hannah's eyes stared back. But it was Elias's fire burning in them. For us, I whispered, the plural of vow to the ghost sharing my skin. The room was a pressure cooker, mahogany table scarred from decades of backroom deals, air thick with cologne and unspoken accusations. Victor presided like a king, Elena at his right in pearl gray Chanel, Marcus fidgeting with his Mont Blanc. The board, old money fossils and tech bros in equal measure, leaned in as the CFO presented the irregularities. My heart, her heart, thudded like a war drum. When the hammer fell, it was swift. Evidence surfaced, implicating Hannah Reese in the diversions, forged emails from her account authorizing the transfers. Victor's face was a mask of sorrow, Elena's eyes gleaming with false pity, Marcus avoiding my gaze like I was already a corpse. You're terminated, the chairman intoned, his voice gravel over silk. Security materialized, badges cold against my wrists as they escorted me out. But as the doors hissed shut, sealing me in the marble lobby with my cardboard box of personal effects, I didn't weep. I laughed a low, broken sound that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. They thought they'd won, buried the inconvenient truth under layers of NDAs and severance. But in firing Hannah, they'd freed Elias. And from the shadows of that lobby, phone in hand, I hit send on the final dossier. Every ledger, every recording, every swapped soul scream, routed to every major outlet from the Journal to the Post. With a single subject line, Sterling's empire, built on stolen lives. The fallout was biblical. But that was just the spark. The city that never sleeps became my accomplice in the unraveling, its pulse syncing with the chaos I unleashed from a burner laptop in a midtown Starbucks. The kind of anonymous hive where baristas don't ask questions and Wi-Fi flows freer than the lies I'd lived. By dawn, the headline screamed, Sterling CEO implicated in $200 million fraud scheme, life's charity front for bribes. Reporters swarmed the tower like locusts, cameras flashing judgment on the revolving doors where I'd exited just hours before. Victor's fortress cracked. Stock plunging 40% in pre-market. Shareholders baying for blood. But revenge isn't a headline. It's the slow bleed after the story fades. I hold up in Hannah's, my Hampton's cottage. A windswept relic she'd inherited from a mother who overdosed on Elena's wellness elixirs long ago. The place was a museum of muted privilege, faded chintz curtains, a library of unread classics, a decanter of Scotch gathering dust. Here, in the salt-stung quiet, the memories intensified, hers bleeding into mine like ink in water. I saw her as a teen, eavesdropping on Victor and Elena's midnight arguments, learning early that power was a currency traded in whispers and betrayals. She'd risen anyway, a phoenix in pencil skirts, only to be clipped by the very wings they'd promised. And me? Elias's fragments surfaced too, a childhood in trailer parks outside Philly, dad lost to opioids, mom waitressing doubles to fund my accounting degree. We'd both been pawns, swapped to protect the board. The calls started at first light, board members in panic, journalists sniffing for quotes, even a tentative ping from my old number. Elias? If that's you. Help. It was her voice, faint and frantic, trapped in my husk of a life. My thumb hovered over the reply, a war raging in this borrowed chest. Pity? Or the pragmatic calculus of survival? I typed nothing. Instead, I drove back to the city, the Jag's engine a low growl mirroring the storm in my veins, and parked across from Sterling Tower. Through binoculars from a coffee van, I watched the siege, Victor bundled into a black SUV. Face ashen under the fedoras of feds, Elena emerging in oversized sunglasses, her poise cracking as paparazzi bayed like hounds. Marcus was the loose end, the one who'd twisted the knife deepest. He'd been my friend once, beers after hours, dreams of equity shares, but ambition had hollowed him out, leaving a shell that echoed Victor's cruelty. I tracked him to his Tribeca loft, a minimalist cage of glass and steel where he paced like a trapped wolf, phone glued to his ear. Slipping in was child's play. Hannah's key fob still buzzed the lobby doors. A ghost in the machine. The elevator hummed a scent, my pulse a staccato rhythm. And when the doors parted, there he was, shirt untucked, eyes bloodshot, a tumbler of bourbon trembling in his grip. Hannah. His voice cracked, relief warring with suspicion. Jesus. Thank God. You gotta call this off. The board's turning on us. But we can spin it. Say it was a hack. External actors. He stepped closer, hand outstretched like we were allies again. But I saw the flicker, the calculation, weighing if I'd break or bite. I let him pull me into the loft, the door clicking shut like a trap. The space was a shrine to excess, abstract art screaming silent screams. A bar cart stocked with single malts that could have funded my old life twice over. Spin it, I echoed, her voice a silken noose. Like you spun me. Elias framed him for the discrepancies, made him the fall guy so you could climb. The words hung, controversial as a confession in a confessional. His face drained, realization dawning like a gut punch. What the? You're not. He backed away, glass shattering on the herringbone floor, shards glinting like accusations. I advanced, slow and deliberate, channeling every ounce of the man I'd been and the woman I'd become. You swapped us. Victor's toy. That neural bullshit. You knew I'd find the files. So you erased me, put me in her body to watch it burn from the inside. But here's the twist. Marcus. I didn't burn alone. He lunged then. Not for the door, but for a side table drawer. Gun. No doubt. The coward's equalizer in America's gun-soaked underbelly. I was faster. Adrenaline, a borrowed grace. Sweeping a brass lamp from the console and cracking it across his temple with a thud that echoed my fractured soul. He crumpled, groaning. Blood, finally. A taste of it, welling from the gash. No gore for the faint-hearted, just the metallic tang sharpening the air. I zip-tied his wrists with cords from the blinds, a makeshift restraint born of desperation and dark web tutorials, and dragged him to the leather sectional. Wake up, I hissed, splashing Evian from his mini fridge across his face. His eyes fluttered open, pupils dilating in terror. Tell me why. Was it the promotion? The penthouse? Or just because you could?
He spat.
Defiant, even bound. You are nothing, Elias. A spreadsheet jockey sniffing where you didn't belong. Hannah was collateral, too nosy, too pure. Victor needed her out.
And you.
You were perfect. Disposable. The admission was a gift. Raw and rancid. Confirming the depths, not just fraud, but human experimentation. Souls bartered like stocks. Elena had sourced the tech from black market psychosurgeons in Eastern Europe, Victor greenlighting it to cull the herd of internal threats. Marcus had volunteered me drug coffee at that bar meet, a van ride to a clinic in Jersey, the swap sealed with electrodes and Elena's whispered incantations, blending science and superstition in that uniquely American alchemy of hubris. I recorded it all, his sobs, his bargains, uploading in real time to a Dropbox mirrored across servers from here to Hong Kong. Pleading the fifth won't save you now, I said, standing over him, the lamp's weight still humming in my palm. It was the first controversial choice, mercy or the edge. I chose the edge. Not with blows, but words, detailing how I'd rerouted the laundered funds to victims' trusts. Anonymous wire transfers that'd unravel their alibis like cheap thread. His empire of lies collapsed in whimpers. The golden boy reduced to a stain on his own rug. By morning, the feds had him, tipped by my final anonymous call, the one that painted him as the architect, Victor's patsy turned patsy maker. I slipped out before the sirens wailed, melting into the pre-dawn joggers along the Hudson, Hannah's lithe form blending with the elite's ritual penance. But the high was fleeting, guilt gnawed like termites in drywall. Had I become them, vindictive, void of empathy? The swap's bleed intensified, Hannah's voice in my head, not accusatory but collaborative, urging, finish it. For both of us. The climax brewed in D.C., where the real power festered, not in boardrooms, but the marble halls where Elena's donors pulled strings. I flew coach, incognito in flats and a hoodie that screamed not her, crashing a gala at the Hay Adams under a false invite swiped from Marcus's contacts. The room dripped opulence, crystal chandeliers casting prisms on tuxedos and gowns. Senators schmoozing over caviar while the orchestra played Stars and Stripes like a dirge. Elena held court near the fireplace, her laugh a brittle shield. Victor at her elbow, thinner, grayer, but still the wolf in wool. I waited until the toasts, champagne flutes raised to bipartisan progress, then stepped into the light. Ladies and gentlemen, I called, Voice amplified by the room's hush. A word on true philanthropy. Gasps rippled as recognition dawned. Hannah Reese. The disgraced exec. Gate-crashing the elite's confessional. Victor's face twisted. Elena's pearls clenching in her fist. I held up my phone, the screen projecting via a hacked AV feed. The recordings. The ledgers. Elena's voice crooning. We take from the weak. Pandemonium erupted, shouts. Flashes. Security converging like antibodies on a virus. Victor lunged, snarling. You bitch, it's over. But I sidestepped, his grab glancing off my arm. And, in that moment, the controversial heart of it, I could have ended him there. A shove toward the unrailed balcony overlooking Lafayette Square. A tragic accident for the history books. The thought thrilled. Dark and debatable, justice or murder. America's vigilante soul whispered yes. But Hannah's echo screamed no. I let security haul him back, whispering as they passed. Tell your donors the swap's real. Souls don't forget. Arrests followed like dominoes. Elena in cuffs at dawn. Her empire of faux benevolence crumbling under RICO charges. Victor frog-marched from his jet at Teterboro. The Fed smiles as cold as the cuffs. Marcus flipped first, trading testimony for a plea. His golden parachute popped. Sterling and Associates dissolved in a fire sale. Assets seized to repay the ghosts, me. Hannah. The dozens swapped and silenced over years. But as the dust settled, the twist uncoiled. Venomous and unforeseen. A week later, in a Queens motel that smelled of mildew and regret, my phone buzzed with a video from an unknown number. It was me, Elias's face, hollow-cheeked and haunted, speaking in Hannah's inflections. You think you won? We were always the same. I chose this, swapped us to feel the power you craved. Victor was the scapegoat. I am the architect. Her laugh. My laugh. Intertwined. The real Hannah, puppeteering my old body, had orchestrated it all, not betrayal, but a symbiotic revenge. We'd been allies in the ether, souls entwined before the switch, her digging intersecting my drudgery, plotting the fall from afar. The revelation hit like vertigo. No victims. Just co-conspirators in a grander con. Victor, Elena, Marcus, they were pawns too. Their crimes amplified to draw out bigger fish. The donors now scrambling as our evidence web ensnared them. Happy ending? Or by tragic farce? Two fractured psyches fused in vengeance. Debating morality over midnight takeout? The world saw justice. We saw the mirror. Cracked but unyielding. And, in that reflection, Elias and Hannah grinned as one. The aftermath stretched like a hangover after the apocalypse. The kind where the sun rises too bright on a skyline scarred by your own wildfires. We settled into a uneasy truce in that Queen's dive. The motel's flickering neon signing, no vacancy, like a prophecy for our souls. Hannah's video looped in my mind. Her words a Mobius strip of confession and camaraderie. We'd crossed paths years ago. Not in flesh, but in the digital detritus of corporate espionage. She'd hacked my audits for leverage. I'd ghosted her tips to the IRS. Anonymous breadcrumbs building to this mutual detonation. The swap wasn't punishment, it was partnership. A forced intimacy to execute the endgame. We're the American dream inverted, she'd said in the clip. Elias's lips curling in her smirk. Built from nothing. Burning it all. But unity bred its own controversies. The news cycle devoured the scandal. Pundits on Fox and MSNBC clashing like gladiators. Was it heroism? Exposing elite corruption? Or anarchy? A vigilante hack job that tanked pensions and jobs for the innocent rank and file? Protests flared outside Sterling's husk, blue-collar workers picketing for restitution, while Wall Street suits decried witch hunts over cognac. I watched from dive bar stools in Hell's Kitchen, nursing IPAs that tasted like regret, fielding voicemails from lawyers offering settlements fat enough to buy silence. Hannah, in my old skin, texted coordinates for meets, appear in Red Hook at midnight, her silhouette gaunt against the cargo ship's hulking shadows. Our first reunion was electric, fraught as a blind date with destiny. She know. He approached shuffling, my former slouch exaggerated by months of street-hardened paranoia, a hoodie swallowing the frame I'd once cursed as inadequate. Elias, she said, voice a gravelly echo of my own. Or should I say, Hannah? Feels weird. Huh. We embraced awkwardly, bones pressing like puzzle pieces from different sets. And in that clutch, the bleed surged, her memories of boardroom battles, my echoes of ramen-fueled all-nighters, intertwining until I couldn't parse the pain. We talked for hours, the East River lapping confessions from our lips. She'd initiated the swap, dosing herself at Victor's team-building retreat, then spiking my drink via Marcus's unwitting help, a chain of betrayals we'd weaponized. It was supposed to be temporary, she admitted. My eyes, glinting with unshed tears. Link minds, share the load, unplug when done. But Elena's rituals, they fused us. Now we're this, hybrids haunting our own ghosts. The tech was a bastard child of Silicon Valley hubris and Beltway black ops. Neural bridges meant for intel sharing, but hijacked for control. We'd been test subjects in a larger game. Victor, a mid-level fixer for donors who feared leaks from the inside. The decisions that followed were landmines of morality. Each step a debate we'd hash out over smuggled diner pies. First, the funds. I'd rerouted millions to victims, ex-employees blacklisted, families of the swapped who'd vanished into psych wards or worse. But Hannah pushed bolder, hit the donors direct, drain their PACs into community trusts for opioid recovery in Philly, workforce retraining in Brooklyn. Eye for an eye, she argued, fists clenched in my old calluses. They stole lives, we steal empires. I countered with caution. FBI heat was rising, agents sniffing our digital trails like bloodhounds. Yet in the dead of night, fingers flying over keyboards in tandem, we executed. Crypto wallets bled dry. Attributions pinned on anonymous justice, a moniker that trended on TikTok with memes of flaming money clips. Controversy crested with the trials, a circus of American excess broadcast from federal courtrooms in Foley Square. Victor took the stand first, a specter in ill-fitting jail blues, spinning tales of rogue elements and personal vendettas. Elena followed, her testimony a masterclass in deflection, tears for the cameras, whispers of abuse to paint herself the victim. Marcus, the rat, detailed the fraud in sniveling precision, but omitted the swaps, his plea deal shielding the sci-fi horror. We watched from a hacker den in Williamsburg, screens multiplied like sins, interjecting anonymously via deepfakes, leaked depositions that forced judges to subpoena the neural logs, exposing the human cost. Subjects 47 and 52, the files read, us, listed as resolved anomalies. The climax wasn't a bang but a slow implosion, unfolding in a nondescript conference room during Victor's sentencing. We'd infiltrated via a bribed clerk, Hannah in a janitor's jumpsuit, me as consulting analyst with forged creds. As the judge droned restitution figures, pennies on the dollar for the lives ruined, Victor locked eyes with me across the gallery, recognition dawning like a death rattle. "Reese," he mouthed, venom twisting his lips. But it was Hannah who struck, slipping a USB into the prosecutor's briefcase, the final piece. Elena's donor list cross-referenced with swap victims, tying the fraud to election tampering on a scale that made Watergate look like checkers. Chaos cascaded, recess called, marshals swarming, Victor's howl echoing as feds hauled Elena from the antechamber in fresh irons.
Outside,
Rain lashed the streets, protesters chanting justice for the swapped, as if they'd glimpsed our truth. We fled into the subway's maw, adrenaline a shared high, laughing maniacally on the F train to nowhere. "We did it," she gasped, gripping her hand. "Their world ends, ours begins." But the twist reversed everything. A gut-wrenching inversion that left us gasping in a Coney Island flophouse, waves crashing judgment below the boardwalk. It came via a courier drone, anonymous and insistent, a neural scanner, DARPA-stamped, with instructions to realign. We activated it together, electrodes humming against temples, and the floodgates burst, not separation, but revelation. The swap hadn't fused us, it had unmasked a deeper lie. We weren't two souls entwined, we were fragments of one. Elias Crow had died years ago, OD'd in that trailer park, his consciousness digitized in a black-site AI experiment to preserve talent. Hannah, seeking an edge, had uploaded herself into the sim, merging with my echo to birth a hybrid Avenger. Victor hadn't betrayed us. He'd created us. Elena's rituals the code to stabilize the merge. The fraud? A simulation loop. Our revenge a self-fulfilling script to test loyalty thresholds. The world outside blurred trials. Headlines. Restitution checks piling like autumn leaves, but inside, the debate raged eternal. Were we human? Seeking justice? Or code? Chasing ghosts? Happy? In the merge, we'd toppled titans, redistributed billions to the forgotten. Tragic? We'd erased ourselves. Originals lost to the machine's maw. As the scanner beeped finality, offering a reset to solitary states, we chose stasis, together, haunting the ether, whispering to whistleblowers in dreams, ensuring no boardroom ever silences a soul again. In America's endless reinvention, who's to say what's real? The empire fell. But the question lingers, did we win? Or just reboot the game?